Good evening, everyone. I'm Deb Henneberry of the 99's Webinar Committee, and I welcome you to tonight's presentation, Riding the Lines with Captain Janet Patton. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of tonight's webinar, SiriusXM. And now I will hand things over to Glenna Blackwell.
Oh, thanks, Deb. I'm Glenna Blackwell. I'm at 99 from the New England section, and I'm part of the webinar committee working with Deb. Our guest this evening is Janet Patton. Janet is currently serving as an international director for the 99s. She's been flying airplanes for 38 years. Janet says one of her biggest accomplishments was becoming a Spirit Airlines first woman pilot in 1996, followed by the first woman captain in 1998. Also in 1998, she was hired by American Airlines, where she is currently American Airlines' youngest woman Boeing 777 captain. Janet resides in Denton, Texas, and she is a published author. She has written a book called Riding the Lines: An American's Adventures on the London Underground. Thank you so much for being here this evening, Janet. Please share a little bit more about yourself if you'd like, and we look forward to joining you on an underground adventure.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Glenna. I am happy to be with you tonight. Just in case, I want to let you know I am sitting in Minneapolis Airport. I think I'm in a quiet spot. You may hear some background noise, but I'm pretty sure that the overhead announcements will be minimal or maybe non-existent. So just to let you know that. Okay, so yeah, leading up to that was the highlight of my career so far, as being the first woman pilot at Spirit Airlines. Right before that job, I actually had the opportunity to fly cargo. And because of that, it gave me a chance to learn how to ride the underground. I will show you how that experience tied into writing the book, and we will go ahead and begin. So you're going to come aboard with me while we explore the hidden gems beneath the city streets. And we're going to begin by talking about the London Underground, which some of you may have heard is also known as the Tube. I do use those terms interchangeably. So just a little bit about the book, first of all. It is a newly published, self-published book. I published it in May of this year, available right now on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. The book idea actually began January of 2023. I researched for the book and wrote along the way from January through December of 2023, so last year. My editor received my manuscript in January of 2024, so earlier this year, at the beginning of the year. Then we went back and forth between March and April of this year to complete it, and the manuscript was actually complete and uploaded to Kindle Direct Publishing May of 2024. So brand new book. You can see I actually have 12 reviews so far on Amazon. I have a 5.0. I am curious if anyone has actually read part of the book. If you could maybe put that in chat, let me know. That would be very helpful. If not, it's okay. I'm going to give you a lot of background on the book. So in the beginning, so the cargo job that I talked about was for a company called Xantep. I was based at Willow Run, that's just outside of Detroit, Michigan. I flew a Lockheed Electra, that's down on the lower right-hand corner of the slide. It's a 4-engine. Lockheed, for some reason, like to use the Electra name on the 10. The Lockheed 10, as you know, Amelia's plane that she flew for her round the world flight. And this one is an L-188 designation, is a 4-engine turboprop. It was the predecessor to jet airliners for passengers. It had a brief time in passenger service This one actually was a Hawaiian Airlines airplane. Between the reciprocating engine airplanes that we had and the jet was the turboprop. So it had a short-lived life in passenger service, but it was excellent, useful load, and it made a very good cargo airplane. At Zantop, I was only there for about 2.5 years, but during that time, I was sent to the UK to fly for this company called Channel Express. That is you can see kind of the US flag there on that tail, and it's an unregistered airplane. So everyone flying our airplane for Channel Express in the UK had to have an FAA certificate. They told me one June 1994, it was my turn to go, and I have to be honest, I did not want to go. I ended up, so if you think back to 1994, it really seemed like we were way far out. Whoa, disconnected, I should say, from people, because we didn't have computers, there were no cell phones, phone calls were hard, and I had a boyfriend at the time, so I really didn't want to go. But I did embrace it, and what helped, and this is a direct tie to the book, is that we had an ops agent named Marty. He's in the picture there with me on the upper right. He was from Macon, Georgia. We had a base in Macon, and he was from there. And the company sent him to help clueless pilots like me settle into the UK flying. So Marty picked me up on the 11th of June, 1994 at Gatwick Airport. He drove me to our crew house outside of Stansted Airport in Bishop Stortford. And he showed me where my bedroom was. He showed me around the house. He showed me the 4 channels we got in the TV. And he said, get a good night's sleep, because tomorrow I'm going to take you into London and show you how to get around on the underground, so that when you have days off, you can go sightsee, or if you have visitors, you can sightsee. That picture is my original ticket. It was a paper ticket that I saved. And my goal with this book, once I decided last January that I was going to go ahead and ride all the lines on the underground, I went back through my memorabilia and I found the actual ticket. So my goal was to try to complete the manuscript by my 30th anniversary, which is in June. So by being done in May, I fulfilled that goal. That was, by the way, the first time I've ever been to a Hard Rock Cafe in London, so that was pretty neat. Okay, so flash forward now to October of 2021. I became a pilot on the 777. From 1994 to 2021 is a really long time. I had never, ever landed as a pilot where I had flown the plane across the Atlantic Ocean myself and then landed in London until October of 2021. So this is us after we landed in London, the very first time ever for me. The upper right-hand picture is myself, my captain. In 21, people were still wearing masks, so that was my captain in the mask there. And 2 co-pilots, because we have to swap out during training flights for our rest breaks. So the lady was one of the relief co-pilots, and the guy behind me, a relief co-pilot. In the lower picture, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we went to eat. This is a picture of the 4 of us. The man sitting next to me to the left in the picture is actually lives in England. His name is Keith Jones. He had an FAA certificate. He was qualified and checked out to fly our Lockheed Electra airplane for Channel Express. And he was actually my flight engineer one of the times I came to fly when I was co-pilot. And him and I have remained friends for the last 30 years. He is a retired airline pilot now. He flies small airplanes, and he's also a mechanic for small planes. So I have a section of my book called Journal Entries, because I actually did have some journal entries that I have done over the years. And I included to start how I decided to start writing this book. So the first picture on the left, with not so happy looks on some of our faces, is because we got on a wrong train going from North England down to London because we wanted to go see fireworks for New Year's Eve. And we got on the wrong train, somehow wrong platform. We had to turn around and go the other direction. So that was the top right picture is us leaving. That's my kids, one of my kids' partners. So we were leaving Northern England is the top picture on the right. The bottom picture on the right is New Year's Eve that year. This would have been 22, December 31st of 22. This one shows us finding a geocache while we were there. This is like January 1st. And one of the things that I had to figure out was how in the world am I going to get us from London? The two kids had to go back to school, so I had to get them to London Heathrow Airport. When I'm a pilot for a trip, the company hires a shuttle for us. And on that shuttle ride, I don't have to worry about getting around by train. So it's been a really long time since I explored the underground. And I was also having to figure out with the oldest child how I was going to get us up to Wembley. In that picture on the right, you'll see Wembley kind of way up to the north west of us where the dot was there for where our location was. And we were staying way off to the east in London. So I thought, I wonder if the underground takes us out to the airport or up to Wembley. And sure enough, it did. So this is the Piccadilly line. And that's what we had done. I had taken my kids, escorted the two that had to leave to go back to school, escorted them to Heathrow. And during that train ride, I thought, wow, this is really neat. I thought, I wonder what it would be like if I rode all the lines end to end. And I have to say, when I had that thought, I had no idea how many lines there were to begin with and how extensive it was. I just thought, wow, I wonder what it would be like if I did that. And then I kind of thought, I wonder how much it would even cost. Of course, that's a consideration. And then I almost immediately had the thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to write them all end to end, and I'm going to write a book about it. So this is a picture of coming out of the underground station for Wembley. It has stairs that go down underneath the road, and then you go into the whole arena area. The upper right-hand picture shows we were staying in Pimlico, and when I looked on an app, I looked at how do we get out there, and it was really simple. We would board the station at train at Pimlico, go up to Green Park, do an interchange, one more line, and that would be it. It was actually very simple. It actually took us only 22 minutes to go from Wembley Park after the show Newsies back to our hotel, which is quite amazing considering how far out it is. So I got home all excited after this trip, and I dug through some memorabilia to see what I had about my first time riding the lines. And I have a picture of a postcard there, and I have some journal entries from a journal that I started. If anyone's ever done Creative Memories, that's part of a book album that I've started. Nothing significant except that it did have some notes in there. So it was quite enjoyable to read that, similar to a diary. So it started as an idea, January of 2023, while I was on that train. It started as an idea, and I needed a convenient way to write because I knew that I would be writing while I was traveling. So I chose an app, and the app I chose was the Ulysses app, and I got to work. The Ulysses app is not that user friendly, but I did trial and error practice with it. And then I started to, well, one of the things I definitely did was I realized that if I keep the phone in the iCloud, just in case something happened, I wouldn't lose any of the work that I have already started. So I was able to figure out how to put it in the iCloud. Some of the things that are listed on there are their examples, which is not very user friendly, to be quite honest. So it was a lot of trial and error in the beginning. But once I figured out, then I called it Two because I didn't have a name for the book yet. And I just started doing some organization. Forward, I found a quote that I like. The quote was, "If you doubt yourself, then indeed you stand on shaky ground." I thought that was very appropriate. And then just some structure for a way to how I was going to tackle the underground, because it turns out once I looked at the tube map, there are 11 train lines, 11 train lines. So I had to figure out how I'm going to do this. I wrote down those 11 train lines, and I also then put them in chronological order. So I had to research that. And so here is a little bit of that and how I did it on my phone. This is screenshots from my phone. And the nice thing was I could set myself a daily goal if I wanted to. I did not write every day, but when I did write, I thought it was a nice personal gratification to set 500-word minimum for the day. And once it turned green, I liked to see that. And so I just wrote when I could or when it made sense. And I did the research while I was on my layovers. Let me explain a layover real quick. Usually I did 3-day trips. I was always on call, so I never knew exactly when I was going out. The entire year, though, was last year as a co-pilot, I did fly pretty much strictly to London because that's what we fly a lot out of Dallas, Fort Worth. In the summertime, we have 4 flights a day, and a lot of times they come up into open time. So the day before, I would know I was going to London. Most of the time, I would spend about 24 hours. In that time, I had to eat, sleep, and then explore. Sometimes we had a 6-day trip. One of the layovers was a little shorter, a 17-hour layover. Another one would be maybe as long as 30 hours. But for the most part, most of the layovers that I had all last year were about 24 hours. So I packed a lot in a short amount of time. On the picture screenshot on the left, I have highlighted the Elizabeth line. Now, the Elizabeth line is not technically part of the underground. But when I did my research, I realized that the Elizabeth line is a somewhat new line, and it made sense to go explore it. I will also mention here, because it's a good time to mention, that all the lines I decided would have some kind of theme attached to that line. But I didn't necessarily choose the theme until I went out and actually explored the line. So the Elizabeth line's theme that made sense to me was about technology, because the Elizabeth line is 2022 is when it actually opened. So in 2023, when I was riding the Elizabeth line, the line was not even yet 1 year old. Let me say, by comparison, that the Metropolitan line, which is the first line of the underground, which we will explore in a minute, is from 1863. So the Elizabeth line has quite a bit of new technology from 2022, 160 years later. I put everything in chronological order, and then I tried my best to stick to that for my research. Sometimes I would have to do it a little different just because of where we were staying, or also one of the lines is not open on a weekend. So I did that one when I was on a weekday to make sure I got it done. But for the most part, I did everything in chronological order and let the lines speak to me. And so the Elizabeth line, here it is. I do have 2023 because that's when I explored it. It's technically 2022, so that's a misprint. I should have 2023 there. Queen Elizabeth, Her Majesty the Queen, actually opened this line before she passed away later that year. I believe maybe it was the month of May, and she passed away in September. There is what the train looks like. And a lot of people do think it's part of the underground because they have it on the tube map, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But it does use a different train line system than the actual underground network does. And the current Prince and Princess of Wales have been on it. So they had some social media about it. So I thought that was pretty neat that they have been on it now too. This is an example of a modernized station. The picture on the left shows a glass and rounded ceiling, open and very light. The picture on the upper right is the same thing. That's a corridor approaching the platform at the end. And the platform is all enclosed in glass. What that means is when you're standing there at the platform and the train comes rushing in, you no longer have that feeling of rushed air being pushed through the tunnel. The bottom right picture is me on a train that was fairly empty. It is quiet, it is cool, and it doesn't shake. You can walk around very easily on the train. All the carriages, which usually there are 9 on the Elizabeth line, they're all open carriages, meaning you could walk between one carriage to another the whole length of the train and never have to go through a door between them. Okay, so Paddington Station, this was an accidental chapter, to be quite honest. Usually I knew in advance where I was going to be researching next, and to be quite honest, on the time that I went once, I really didn't know where I was going to go. So from my hotel, I just headed up to Paddington Station. And I thought, well, I'll figure out where I'm going to go from here. I looked around Paddington Station and I realized there was so much to write about. So it ended up being an entire chapter just on Paddington Station. It's the only station that I have written in the book. And it ties in very nice to the Elizabeth line about technology and the Metropolitan line, which is coming up next. So I have here that the entire chapter was written while I was standing in the station. That was about 3 hours of standing in the station, walking around and exploring. And this is one of the cute little signs, "Welcome to Paddington Station, working for you." And you can see the wall on the left, that is some construction right there. This is what Paddington Station looks like when I come in from the underground, the Circle Line, from my hotel. So I get off the train here on the platform and I walk toward the main station. The upper right is the station. It has the Elizabeth line behind me and also the Heathrow Express. You can go from Paddington Station all the way to London Heathrow nonstop in 15 minutes. That is quite a savings if one were to want to do that. To give you a comparison, it takes our shuttle bus an hour, sometimes even longer. The bottom right-hand picture is me with Paddington Bear sitting on a bench, and Paddington is eating a marmalade sandwich. Paddington Station is quite a transportation hub, which is pretty much why I ended up writing about it. It had significance in the very beginning with the very first underground line. Metropolitan Railway is what it was originally called, and that's where we head next. This picture right here is of Google Maps with the transit layer turned on. The blue dot is my location when I did the screenshot, and you can see all the lines running into the underground. They are all color coded, and that has come about since the 1990s. That helps passengers really identify what trains they are on, because the trains are also color coded to match the colors on the tube map. So the Metropolitan line right here, the theme is about moving people, because really they needed to come up with a system to get people off the streets. Literally from Paddington Station, which was an above ground station for steam trains that would take people out to the west and northwest of England. They had to get people off the streets in this about just under 5 mile stretch of road, which was extremely busy in 1863 with foot traffic, horses, carriages, and what they would call an omnibus, which is a big bus that's pulled by horses as well. So somebody had the brilliant idea of coming up with a steam train and putting it underground. So they built this, what they called Metropolitan Railway in the beginning, and they connected Paddington, which they called Bishop's Road in the beginning, Edgware Road, Baker Street Station, Portland, Gower Street, which is now called Euston, King's Cross Station, which some of you may recognize from Harry Potter, and Farringdon. Those 7 stations are the original underground. From the day it opened in 1863, the underground was considered a success. But can you imagine steam trains burning coal? I can't imagine it was comfortable to breathe. It still looks like there's remnants of coal on certain places in the underground, and it must have been challenging, but it was a success for moving people under the crowded streets of London. The map on the left-hand side shows what it would have looked like underneath the city streets. And you can see the Metropolitan Railway pretty much follows a main street right there from Paddington to King's Cross, and then turns south to Farringdon. So the first thing I did was I wanted to explore these 7 stations first. And I actually have not been to all stations. People ask me, have you been to all of them? There are 272 stations on the underground officially of the 11 lines. I have not been to all of them, but I have been to a good majority of them. The main goal was to ride the lines end to end to see what the lines were about, not necessarily to see what was above ground necessarily, unless it seemed like that's what I needed to do. So in 1863, there's a sign that shows the King's Cross Underground Station was built. 1863, it was one of those main 7 stations. The upper right-hand picture is Farringdon. So the day I decided to explore all 7 stations as the first part of my exploration, this is actually where I began, was I decided to go from east to west. So I started at Farringdon and then worked my way back toward Paddington. Gower is now called Euston Square. And then we have Great Portland Street, Baker Street. This is more Baker Street because it turns out, and I get asked a lot what my favorite station is, it is Baker Street Station. It is, if you know Sherlock Holmes, it's very close to the Sherlock Holmes address in the books. And the original platform, which would have been 1 and 2, are now numbered 5 and 6. That's the lower right-hand picture. And I got permission to take a picture of this German photographer who was taking pictures of this platform at Baker Street Station because it is authentic to and almost virtually unchanged actually from 1863. Also, on another side of the station, you can see the platforms 1 and 2 that are now on the left-hand picture. Those are an open platform, unlike the one on the lower right, which is a what they call a cut and cover tunnel. The open platform on the left and also the upper right is somewhat open platform as well. And I happened to find a Starbucks on the platform. It's the only Starbucks I found on a platform anywhere. And this first time I was there was in February. It was cold. I was excited to see it. If you know me, you know I like Starbucks for the consistency of their drinks. And so I was happy to be able to get a cup of hot coffee sitting on that cold platform for a while. And I chatted to the baristas. And it turns out every once in a while when I stop by, I get a free drink occasionally now and then. So that's a nice bonus for it. That is why I sometimes also have my book signings in Starbucks, because it has a lot of the book was actually written in some Starbucks around the city. I'll be able to point one out a little bit later. Okay, so this was one of the highlights of my trip. After I did all those 7 stations, I had a layover on a 6-day trip. It was a short layover, so we actually had a hotel at London Heathrow Airport. And I thought, what a great time to hit part of the western part of the current metropolitan line. So I didn't always have the time to ride the lines end to end in one shot. So sometimes I had to break them up. And in this case, I went out to Amersham at the very western end of the line. And there were only about 5 people on the train. I write the picture on the left. I'm about to hop on the train. I was sitting in the back of the train. Then I decided this is a train that has the carriages are all walk through. I decided, well, how cool. I should take a video and go all the way through the train from the back to the front, because why not? When I got to the front, I had a couple minutes to spare. There was a clock near the on the platform, and I waved to the driver, but the driver was in an enclosed cab that was shaded, and I just waved to, I was actually assuming it was a guy. That's a terrible thing to say, but it is the truth. And when the door popped open, I saw Nikki and I was pleasantly surprised we had a woman driver. So I said, hey, I'm a woman pilot. I like seeing women drivers. And she said, oh, do you get to London often? And I said, actually, I'm coming back in 2 days, because it was a 6-day trip. And she said, would you like permission to come with me in the cab? And I'm like, heck yeah. So I got to go with Nikki in the front of the cab. So the bottom right-hand picture is me sitting in the cab during a stop on the Metropolitan line in part of the cut and cover. Let me say here that this is both the underground pictures you're seeing, the cut and cover in the tunnel on the right, and then the one on the left. 55% of the underground is actually above ground, 55%. Only a statistic that I saw was 45% is actually below ground, considered below ground. So her line is the Metropolitan line. And so it was perfect. When I told her that I have themes and what I was doing, she said, oh, what's the theme for the Metropolitan line? And I said, people. And she said, I think it should be scenery. And she goes, because I'm going to show you why. Interesting, because that, remember, above ground statistic I told you. Chesham is another station out near Amersham. It's a single track, and it is absolutely beautiful. So she loves her line. She goes from Amersham and Chesham all the way to Aldgate at the very far east. She does what they schedule her to do, and she absolutely loves her job. She related a few stories to me, though, about her job, and it turns out that the stories she said are related to people. So I think people is a pretty good theme for the Metropolitan line. Hammersmith and City, I decided to do the tube map about this one. So the tube map, let's go ahead and talk about the tube map. So that's also, by the way, this picture is called a roundel. That's the term for the iconic underground station logo. And these are some pictures of what the tube map actually looked like in the beginning. They were basically geographical. They showed the lines on geographic maps. Then they tried to make it a little bit more simplified. That's the picture on the upper right. And then around, I think it's 1934, a very simplified map was designed. And that's very similar to the map we see today. Some other ways to present the map are the displays at stations. Also, they have just the maps displayed in the carriages. This is an older carriage. It's not the walkthrough kind on the bottom right. It does have the doors. And the upper right picture shows what it looks like on Google Maps. Now, all those blue dots are places I've saved because I love using Google Maps. But all those squiggly lines are the underground, or the orange there is also what they call an overground line, which I did not explore because it wasn't part of the original underground lines. They also have pocket tube maps that you can get. They don't have many available, but you can find them. They come out with them probably about 2 to 3 times a year. So the one on the left, the picture on the left, is actually a big poster of what would have been a little size that was out last year. And I just love that design. And then I'm holding one there that you can see for size of what the pocket map looks like. And then the bottom right hand is a simplified picture of a portion of a map, just the line with the information about the line that would be located in the top of carriages, so that when you're standing or sitting in the carriage, you can look up and see what stations are and what lines connect to those different stations to help for navigation. And this is where we get to today. A very complicated map, but if you look to the lower left, it might be hard to read exactly what they say, but the colors on the left, lower left, are the ones that are far to the left are starting with the first 11 are the 11 lines of the underground. You can see how extensive it is. It's absolutely amazing. So the district line is next. The district line, I had the theme of art on the underground. So the reason why I picked art on the underground for this one is because this is Gloucester Road Station. One day we were whizzing by and I saw these big, brightly colored signs. I didn't know what they were, to be quite honest. This is a picture I took from a train, actually. And when I researched it a bit, I discovered that that is a disused platform and they have art installations. So I decided to make the district line about art. When I was at the London Transport Museum in February, I was doing some research about that first line, the Metropolitan line, which is the magenta line there. And a couple of the employees at the London Transport Museum asked if I knew about the Labyrinth Maze artwork. I'm like, no clue what that is. So that was in February, early on in my journey. So they told me about the Labyrinth Maze artwork. For the 150th anniversary, they hired a artist to create these labyrinth mazes, and he designed them all to be very similar. They're the black frame with white metal, a black maze, only one opening for the maze, and the red X always at the bottom. And then he numbered them all in the lower right-hand corner. At the time, there were 270 stations. He numbered them all 1 through 270 in the same order that the two guys who held the Guinness Book of World Records at that time did all the stations in the shortest amount of time. He numbered them in the same order as their record. So that's a little unique history. Some people do it as a treasure hunt. I wasn't really looking for them as a treasure hunt. If you ask me how many, I cannot tell you how many. I'm going to have to go back through and try to figure that out at some point. I have found a lot, but I have not found all of them yet. So the district line was originally called the District Railway, just as the Metropolitan line was called the Metropolitan Railway. At some point, they decided to call them lines and drop the railway. So those brightly colored platform or signs on that platform were actually um, covering up the art installation that's behind me in that left picture. And the sign that is on the pillar in that picture to my to the right of where in the picture is actually a description about that art. And the program is officially now called Art on the Underground. And London takes their art on the underground very seriously. If you are just hurrying by as a passenger traveling, you might miss all the art they have. It's amazing when you stop, kind of like stop and smell the roses. You stop and slow down a little bit, you will see so much artwork on the underground. The upper right hand picture is a memorial of what is considered the worst disaster of the underground. It was during the war at Bethnal Green Station, and it's not on the district line, but I have included it in this chapter because it is art associated with the underground. And this is an upside down staircase. Unfortunately, the disaster that happened was the Bethnal Green station was not open yet during World War II. People would use it as an air raid shelter. One evening when it was dark, there was panic. I think it was March of that year. There was panic ensued when they thought there was airplanes flying overhead, bombing, and 173 people lost their lives in a short amount of time when they packed into the stairwell very close by to this picture. So this memorial has come about as a way to honor the victims of that night. After the war, the station then opened, and at some point they decided to go ahead and add handrails to stairways to help prevent something like that from occurring. A side note is one of the Starbucks that I actually wrote from is in that back corner of that picture where I had a view to this memorial as I could drink my coffee and write about the scenes that I had saw. At some point in my travels, pretty late actually in the year, I had met some people and they were talking about these balloons. I thought they were hot air balloons, but I think they're actually more like gas balloons at Finsbury Park on the Piccadilly line. So I went out in December, pretty close to the end of my travels and research, and found these balloons. Supposedly, now they're out of tile. There's a lot of little tile pieces that make these up, and there's several balloons along the platform. Supposedly, they're supposed to give you the idea of height. I have to say, when you're whizzing down the platform, you're not really seeing the height or the motion of height. However, the Piccadilly line is the deepest line, and so they had this idea maybe we should put some art in there, hot air balloons or balloons, and so there you have it. I was happy to go find them, but I other than them being an art piece, I'm not sure that they show height to me. You're still in a tube. Okay, so let's talk about getting around with the lines in chronological order. So the Metropolitan Line, 1863. The H and C is the Hammersmith and City, is 1864. District Line, 1868. So that's only 4 years later, which is 5 years from the start. Circle Line, that's we're up to that point right now. That's 1884, 20 years later for the Circle Line. The Northern Line comes about shortly after at 1890, Waterloo and City, 1898. Then we go to the Central Line, 1900, Bakerloo, 1906, and Piccadilly Line, 1906. The Piccadilly Line, remember, is the deepest tube to date. The Victoria Line, 60 years, almost 60 years later, the Victoria Line, 1968 is when that line opened. And the Jubilee Line, the last line, is 1979. So let's pick up now at the circle line. I say it is not exactly an unbroken circle. So in the picture, the yellow, the thing that strikes me when I look at the yellow is it's just an optical illusion. But the yellow does not look yellow to me when you look up at the upper part between, let's say, the Hammersmith and City is the pink line and the Metropolitan line is the magenta. When the yellow is between those two colors, it looks pretty orangish to me. If you run the yellow around though and put it next to the green, it looks very yellow. So I think that's an interesting optical illusion. Where the circle, I say it's not a circle, of course, it's more of a rectangle with that little extension off to the east. And then it has a little bit of an extension off to the west as a singular line as well. But where it's the broken piece is at Edgware Road, which is in the top left corner of that yellow circle. And there's where the break is in the circle. What that means is you have to get off and switch trains if you're going to remain on the circle line to go toward King's Cross Station, or vice versa. Coming from King's Cross to Paddington, you still have to change at Edgware Road. It is a little confusing. So when I did the circle line, our hotel actually for that trip was by Westminster. In that picture there, you can see on the left, I was way down at the bottom of the picture. The blue dot is where my location was. And I had to walk straight to the north to Westminster Station. And then I took some pictures and I've included that here. Westminster Station looks pretty interesting. It's got a lot of concrete. It is above ground there, so your cell phone does work while you're in the station, waiting on the platform for the trains. And the district line, which is green, and the circle line both come through it. So I was waiting for the circle line since that was the line I was on. And I was taking the circle line that day toward Paddington Station first, and then I was going to continue the circle. So here I am in the circle line. So what they did in the 90s is they started helping by having, we're going to talk about it in a little while, the fabric on the seats is called moquette. They started color coding that, and the grab bars. The grab bars on the circle line, the district line, and the Hammersmith and City are all yellow. Now the yellow though, because they all share the same trains, they share the same lines and the same tracks. They're a backup for each other. On this one, in the book, I recount a story about when I was doing the circle line. There were some boys that were having fun between the carriage there. In the lower left-hand corner of the picture is showing where the carriage is open, but it has the ability to sway and move. And the boys were trying to keep their balance while the train was doing that. And the man in the right picture was commenting about how fun that is. And I just had a feeling like he was remembering from his youth doing the same thing. I stopped at Paddington Station, and one of the neat things about Paddington Station is there is a canal behind it, and there along the canal are restaurants. So it was a Sunday, I believe, and I decided to go ahead and have some brunch before continuing on. So here is just some other things I found on the circle line. There's the root words is something you can listen to for the art on the underground. I saw baby on board sticker on this one, and they have nice posters along the way. Westminster, there's just a picture of the roundel. Westminster, I believe, looks a lot like the Elizabeth line, the upper right-hand picture. And I think that's where maybe the Elizabeth lines kind of, maybe they'd started testing it out there. I didn't do enough research to see, but it reminds me a lot about the Elizabeth line with that closed platform right there. And I love the Labyrinth Maze artwork that I found at that station. Okay, the Northern line fabric of our lives. This is called moquette. The moquette has been going way back to seat coverings and patterns. So I decided to go to the Wallace and Sewell store. Wallace and Sewell designs a lot of the moquette patterns, including the current Elizabeth line. And when they come up with needing more moquette new patterns, it will probably be them that ends up doing it. They have a store. They could not sell the actual underground because that's licensed, but they have a beautiful store. If you like fabrics, it's definitely worth the trip. This is some examples of how worn the seats are and on the different lines. Compared to the bottom right-hand picture is the Elizabeth line, the current brand new beautiful seats. So you can tell by looking at the pictures that some of the moquette fabrics on the trains need to be updated. Waterloo and City, this is called the business line. So City Station is actually called Bank now. And maybe it would not surprise you to say that it is in the City of London and it is in the banking district. So I am very curious, and I may do some research on a future date about the exact City of London and the start of the City of London, because I'm always fascinated about where finance is and how it started and all that stuff. So this line fascinates me. It's the shortest line at 2 stations, the beginning station and the ending station, whichever way you want to make that. It's the Waterloo station underground or Bank station. That's it. It goes back and forth. I met this young man, and it was Friday, so I did the line out of order because it's not open on the weekends, and I wanted to see what it's like. I believe it might be open Saturday, but it's definitely not open Sunday. Interestingly enough, this is Waterloo Station to get to the Waterloo and City line. It's the only station I found that doesn't have the gates at all that you tap to pay. You can tap to pay on the side, but it's all opened up. And the reason why is because they want the business traveler, men and women, to be uninterrupted with their travel, to just keep walking and go fast. So you can tell that, because they're going back and forth to work. So you can see that on the platform, there's a lot of guys and gals in really nice business clothes. It was casual Friday though, like I said, and I talked to the guy next to me because I really liked the way he was dressed, including his shoes. I thought were really cool. And he was explaining it's casual Friday. So they have that too. This is what it looks like. The line itself, Waterloo and City, is that green color. I think it looks the closest to Tiffany, and Tiffany reminds me of wealth. So I think there's a tie in there. I don't know if that's true or not. That is my opinion though, looking at it. I thought it was interesting to see a news box on the platform. I really didn't see those anywhere else, but makes sense for a business traveler. This is also not an escalator. This is a moving walkway, the bottom right. That's a picture of the moving walkway, so you can see it. They really want to get people to where they need to go. So the upper right has stairs or the moving walkway, and that moving walkway was quite fast. I thought it was very interesting. I had some time I could go explore since it was only the 2 stations, Waterloo and City. When I got to Bank Station, this is all the options. I thought, well, I'll go out exit 8 because it just seemed like I just picked it randomly, to be quite honest. And I came up by Mansion House. Mansion House, I didn't realize is, I believe, where the mayor lives. The City of London mayor lives in Mansion House. Makes sense. One thing that I discovered, which I was very surprised about, was Bloomberg, when they were redoing their building, discovered ancient Roman ruins. Now remember, this is the oldest part of London. I'm very fascinated. Unfortunately, it was closed. I didn't have time. This was a Friday. I had to hurry up actually and do some sightseeing and then get back to the hotel before we flew out this day. And so I'd like to go back and see what that has. Now, this bottom right picture is a sculpture actually of an underground stream, because streams and rivers actually of the oldest part of London have become part of the drainage system as the city has been built upon over the years. And I find that very fascinating. That's actually a sculpture. So here is it. And let me see if I can get the video to play. There we go. Short video. Okay. Not too far of a walk away was St. Paul's Cathedral. I hadn't seen St. Paul's Cathedral basically for about 30 years. The first time I went there, that's where I went when Marty took me around. The Central Line, this is going through the heart of London. It's actually the longest line. I think it's like 46 miles-ish or something, and it goes primarily east to west. The Central Line was very interesting to me. The day I chose to go out to the line and explore this one, I found out there was a vintage railway on part of the line that is no longer used. A disused part of the line has a vintage railway, and it was operating on the Saturday that I was going. So I went to the end of the current line, which is Epping. And this is a little bit about what that looks like. And then I picked up at Epping this vintage double-decker green bus to go to North Weald. These are some people I met along the way, Alan and some kids that were going to the North Weald market. And it was a free bus. And then when we got to North Weald, I hopped on the vintage steam train. I got a collector's ticket. And I thought that was funny. It says, "Caution, do not lean out of the window," but we were doing it. Part of the way, we had to stop. There was some issues on the train, and they decided that we couldn't make it all the way to the very end back to Epping to turn around and go back. So, because they said the engine wouldn't make it up a hill. So we ended up stopping and then turning around. So this is after we turned around. The guys in the front now are driving it. The lower left-hand picture, just to the right, left of his hand, is his cell phone. I thought that was pretty funny. He was using an app on his cell phone to tell the speed. The upper right-hand picture is a caution, and then we got a red light. As you can see, it's a single track, beautiful. They advertised this as a leaf peeping tour, but the leaves had not changed yet. This was September. So I was like, what the heck is he doing? So literally no phones, right? So to find out what the holdup was, one of the guys on the train got off, walked on the track, goes to the pole, calls back to the head office and says, "Why are we stopped?" The man that I met there with his grandson used to be a national train driver, and he had a picture of himself there. I thought that was neat. This is North Weald. That's right in the middle. And it's actually, their little sign says it's the highest point at 340 feet on the London Underground. The furthest end of the original Central Line was Ongar Station. So from Epping to Ongar is the part that's no longer being used as part of the official Underground. That whole thing is the vintage. So Ongar is the end of the Central Line, the original end of the Central Line. So a couple things with this picture is that there was once a bad train accident. They did not have that brick wall that you see in the left-hand picture. The train had a runaway, no brakes, and had an accident into the nearby road. And after that, they decided they needed to have some kind of stopping device at the end, just in case that ever happened again. The bottom right-hand picture shows 0.0. That is how they start measuring the entire mileage on the Underground, and they do use miles there, not kilometers. There's a picnic area there. There's also a museum in the old station. That's that brick building in the left-hand picture. It was originally called the Great Eastern Railway. And if you look very close on the lower right-hand picture of the bench, it says, that actually says GR in the middle, E for Great Eastern Railway. There's an old map that was in the museum. There's an old ticket counter window, and the man who's holding the book has written a lot of books about the railway. So you can go into the museum there, and they have a gift shop as well. Okay, Bakerloo Line, we're getting near the end. The Bakerloo Line is a blended name from the Baker Street and Railway, Waterloo Railway. This is a heritage sign that was put up for 100 years of being in service in 2006. I have to say, this is my least favorite line. This is what the carriages look like. They're very outdated, and they definitely could use some refurbishment. This is the end of the line for one of the end of the line, Harrow and Wealdstone Station, and that's what that looks like for part of the end of the line. And then the other end of the line is the Elephant and Castle, and this is what it looks like. On the Bakerloo line, interestingly, all that brown, drab, and gray. Yet the Harry Styles concert was going on, and all the bright colors of the youth was a pleasant and refreshing change of pace on that Bakerloo line. They had a very long spiraling staircase. Unfortunately, I could not do the Bakerloo line end to end because there were animals at one point on the above ground portion of the Bakerloo line to the north one day, and I had to stop what I was doing and come up with an alternate plan because I didn't know how long it was going to take to reopen due to animals on the track. The Piccadilly line, this is the beginning of my book. So this line is the one that goes from the heart of London out to Heathrow. And so you see a lot of travelers on the line with their luggage. This is what the station looks like in the terminal building. It's a very long line, and the end of that line to the far east is called Cockfosters. There is a term that's a term, and I cannot remember what it means, but a lot of people laugh at that name, Americans. But that name has some significance, so we'll have to go look that up. There again on the Piccadilly line is the ceiling of those balloons and a train going by. You can see the movement of the train with the balloons as well. The Victoria line is the second to last line now. I had a surprise find of tile motifs. This line has 14 stations along the line. It's that beautiful blue color, light blue color, and the tile motifs are at every station. So this is, besides the Waterloo and City, which only has 2, this is pretty much the only other line that I've stopped at every station because I had to take pictures of all the tile motifs. How I discovered the tile was that big wall caught my attention. And if you notice, it's in that same beautiful blue of the line. The day I went out, coincidentally, I saw the same color blue heart on the carpet that is looking down carpet of my hotel. I thought that was a good omen for the day. I did not know about the tile motifs when I found that blue heart. And the Victoria line is named after Queen Victoria, who was the reigning queen monarch in 1863. She, though, had never been on the underground. It wasn't until Queen Elizabeth, who was the first monarch to go on the underground. So I get to Brixton and I see this wooden bench with this tile motifs. And of course, I always found the Labyrinth Maze artworks at the beginning and end of the lines. So that's what that looked like. Very simple in that case. And then I saw Victoria with the wooden bench, and I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder if there's a pattern here. And that's when I started getting off on all of them. So I have all of them here. There's Stockwell, Vauxhall, Pimlico, Warren Street, Green Park, Oxford. I don't have one there because when I went by, I could not find it. Then that Walthamstow Central, Euston. We have King's Cross. They all have some kind of themes. Seven Sisters with the trees, and that's 7 of them there. The Highbury and Illingston, Tottenham Hill, Hale, Finsbury Park, and Black Horse. And then I went back to Oxford Circus because I was determined I was going to find it, and I did. Oxford Circus has probably one of the coolest ones, I think. Very simple in its design. And I saw a really cute puppy named Honey. The Jubilee line, this is the last line. And the Jubilee line originally was not supposed to be called Jubilee. It was supposed to be called Fleet because part of it followed the Fleet River, which is now a buried river, part of the drainage. Because it was coming about in the 1970s, the Queen's Jubilee was around the same time, so they decided to name it Jubilee Line. So I was excited because this was my last line, and when I finished this one, I was done. So here I am. I had to take a bus to the end of the line to make the most sense for the travels. This one has some artwork displayed. I was very happy to find a display of 100 years, 100 artists, and 100 works of art, and they had all to do with the roundel. So here's some pictures as an example of some of the artwork of the roundels. Stanmore is at one end of the line. It's pretty empty until we get to, the train is pretty empty out on the furthest stretches of the line until we get to the bottom right-hand picture is going through the middle of London, very busy. And then at the end of the line, I have to say I was very disappointed. I did find the Labyrinth Maze artwork. The station is not that great looking, very modern. And let me see, let me go back. There was no roundel. That bottom right-hand picture, I could not find a roundel, just the sign name for the station. So I was very disappointed, even though I had finished all lines end to end. So pretty much that's it. I do have a social media and online presence on Facebook, so you can watch me on there, and Instagram. We do have a website called riding-the-lines.com. I did hire a social media manager to help me out, and we are available on Amazon. And that's it. So Deb, if you have any questions, or Glenna?
Yeah, you got some thank yous in the chat. Donna in Florida said, wonderful. Was there years ago as a grad student. There weren't any horses still, but it certainly wasn't as beautiful as what you've shared. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to second that because I lived in London about 25 years ago, and this has been a great walk down memory lane. Yeah, I think to many people, this is a way to commute, but you really embrace the art and the history and just how much of culture is being included in the transportation system. So got a few more thank yous. And I selfishly picked you to speak tonight because you delivered as I knew you would, and really just shedding so much light on, something that's such a part of everyday culture in England.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, and unless anyone else has anything else to add to the chat, I will hand things back over to Glenna.
Oh, thanks, Deb. And thank you, Janet. Oh, that was so informative and really beautiful. I love those tiles. Really looking forward to visiting and checking things out more carefully.